My daughter sent me a box of cupcakes one Tuesday afternoon. The next day she called and asked, "Did you like the little cakes, Mom?" I smiled and said, "Sweetheart, I gave them to your mother-in-law. She loved them." There was silence on the line, then a desperate scream. "I'm glad you're here. Stay with me till the end, and comment which city you're watching from. I love seeing how far my stories travel." The doorbell had rung at exactly 2:30 p.m. I knew something was off even before I opened the door. After 68 years on this earth, you learn to sense when life is about to shift under your feet. The delivery man handed me a small white box tied with a pale pink ribbon, the kind that says, "Luxury Bakery." "From your daughter," he said cheerfully. And Ninsley, my 35-year-old daughter, hadn't baked me anything since she was 12, and that had been for a school project. I stood there holding the box, feeling a strange heaviness. At the kitchen table, I untied the ribbon carefully. Inside were 6 perfect cupcakes, delicate roses made of frosting, tiny flakes of gold on top. They were beautiful. Too beautiful. The moment I lifted the lid, I caught a scent. Sweet vanilla. And something else. Something that didn't belong. I've worked around pastries all my life. My mother ran a small bakery, and I helped her for years. I know what cakes should smell like. But these didn't smell right. There was an odd undertone. Faint, but unmistakable. My hands trembled. Why would Annesley send me these? We hadn't spoken in weeks, not since our last fight about money. She'd hung up after I refused to cover her daughter's school tuition again. I picked up one cupcake. The frosting was thick, almost as if it was hiding something. When I pressed it lightly, it felt heavier than it should. A chill ran through me. My husband Harold always told me to trust my instincts. He'd passed 6 months ago. Maybe this was about what he left behind. The house, the savings, the insurance. Things a Ninsley knew existed. I put the cupcake down and stepped away. My hands shook so badly I had to hold the counter to steady myself. 20 minutes later, the phone rang. "Hi, Mom!" Her voice was too bright. "Did you get my surprise?" "What surprise, honey?" I asked. "The cupcakes. Aren't they gorgeous? I had them made special for you. They cost a fortune, but you're worth it." A fortune? From a woman who'd called crying 2 weeks ago because she couldn't pay her mortgage? My stomach turned. "Oh, those," I said slowly. "They're lovely." "Don't just look at them," she insisted. "Try one. I made sure they're your favorite, vanilla with buttercream. Go on, take a bite. I'll wait." That was when it hit me. She wanted to hear me eat them. "Actually, sweetie," I lied before I could stop myself. "I already gave them to Mrs. Henderson next door. You know how she's been struggling since her husband passed. I thought she could use a treat." There was silence. Long, cold silence. "Mom, what did you just say?" "I gave them to my neighbor. She loved them." "You gave them away? All of them?" Her tone cracked, fear flooding her voice. "Yes, dear. Was I not supposed to?" Then came a scream so loud I pulled the phone away from my ear. "What have you done? Who did you give them to? When?" Her panic froze my blood. I'd never heard her like this, not even during her divorce or her wild teenage years. This was real fear. "Honey, what's wrong? They're just cupcakes." "They're not just—" She stopped herself mid-sentence. "I have to go, Mom. I'll call you back." The line went dead. I stood there holding the phone with shaking hands. The cupcakes sat quietly on the table, perfect, innocent, and terrifying. And in that silence, I understood. I knew what my own daughter had almost done. The child I once rocked to sleep, who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, had just tried to end my story early, and somehow I had stopped her without even realizing it. Sleep didn't come that night. I lay in the bed I'd shared with Harold for over 40 years, staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of everything. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Ninsley's scream echo in my mind. That wasn't the sound of someone upset about a gift being shared. That was the sound of someone whose secret plan had just fallen apart. By morning, I had made up my mind. I needed to know exactly what I was dealing with. The next day, I called Dr. Martinez's office. I told his assistant I had some baked goods that I wanted tested, said I was just worried about food safety. Within an hour, I was sitting in his office, one cupcake sealed carefully inside a plastic bag. "Mrs. Patterson," he said kindly, studying me, "is there something specific you're worried about?" I'd known Dr. Martinez for 15 years. He had treated Harold through his final illness, a man with patience and heart. If anyone would help me without judgment, it was him. "I think someone might have added something to these," I said softly. "Something that could make me very sick." His warm expression shifted into concern. "I'll have the lab run a full analysis," he said. "It might take a day or two." While I waited, I decided to do a little investigating of my own. Ann Inslee had always been private about her finances, and Harold had usually handled her requests for help. But now that he was gone, I realized I didn't really know how deep her problems went, so I started where anyone would, her social media. Scrolling through months of photos, a strange pattern appeared. 3 months ago, a luxury vacation with the kids, expensive hotels, fine dining, smiling faces. 2 months ago, a brand new designer bag, the kind that costs more than most people's rent. Last month, a professional family photo session, everyone dressed in coordinated outfits. Yet, she'd been calling me crying about overdue bills and missing payments. In just 2 months, I had sent her $3,000. Something wasn't adding up. I called my old friend Martha, who worked at the bank where Ann Inslee kept her accounts. We'd known each other since high school. "Martha," I said quietly, "I need a favor. It's about my daughter. I'm worried." She sighed. "Oh, Ramona, you know I can't discuss client accounts." "I'm not asking for numbers," I said. "Just tell me if her story makes sense. Is she really struggling?" There was a long pause. Then Martha's tone changed, lower, serious. "Let's just say," she began carefully, "if someone told me they were broke but their account showed frequent large purchases at luxury stores and restaurants, I'd question their priorities." My heart sank. "Thank you, Martha." "Please be careful, honey," she added. "Money does strange things to people, especially when there's a lot involved." A lot involved. Harold's life insurance had been significant, enough to take care of me comfortably and still leave plenty for Ann Inslee and the grandkids. We'd never hidden that. Maybe that was our mistake. That afternoon I started going through Harold's papers, hoping for some clarity. In a drawer I found a folder labeled Ann Inslee Financial Help. Harold had kept meticulous records, line after line of dates and numbers, transfers, explanations, excuses. Over 5 years, we'd given her more than $60,000, and every so-called emergency turned out to be something else. Vacations, new cars, luxury clothes. She'd been deceiving us for years, but one note stopped me cold, dated just 2 weeks before Harold passed. In Harold's handwriting, asked again about inheritance details, wants to know about timing, legal process, seems unusually interested in power of attorney, told her we'd discuss after the funeral. I stared at the words, my chest tightening. Harold's passing had been sudden, a heart attack in his sleep. There had been no time for that discussion. Then the phone rang. "Mrs. Patterson, this is Dr. Martinez." His voice was tense. "I need you to come in right away, and I think you should consider contacting the authorities." My pulse quickened. "What did you find?" "I can't discuss this over the phone," he said. "Can you come this afternoon?" My hands began trembling again. Whatever had been hiding inside those cupcakes? I was about to find out. An hour later, I sat across from Dr. Martinez as he unfolded the lab results. His expression said everything before the words even left his mouth. "The cupcakes," he began carefully, "contained a strong sedative, enough to put someone your size into a deep sleep for hours. Combined with your regular medication, it could have been extremely dangerous." He paused, his tone turning even gentler. "This wasn't an accident, Mrs. Patterson. The dosage was too precise. Someone planned this." I left his office in a fog. My daughter hadn't just sent me a bad batch of desserts. She had calculated something far worse, and now I understood why. That evening, I sat at the kitchen table surrounded by Harold's old paperwork, the will, the insurance files, the bank documents. If I had lost consciousness, or been declared unable to make decisions, Aninsley would have inherited everything immediately. But then I noticed something I'd never paid attention to before. A clause Harold had quietly added to his will months before he passed. He'd begun to doubt our daughter's financial responsibility. The new condition placed her inheritance into a managed trust, released only in small portions, unless I personally signed a document removing that restriction. She didn't know that. She thought a single signature from me would give her full access. The phone rang. Her name flashed on the screen. For a moment, I considered letting it ring. But I needed to know how far she was willing to go. "Hello, honey." "Mom," she began softly. Her voice was calm now, almost too calm. "I've been thinking about yesterday, about the cupcakes. Maybe we should talk. Can I come by tomorrow?" "Of course," I said, keeping my tone even. "What time?" "How about 10? I'll bring coffee." After I hung up, I stared at the phone for a long time. She was coming back, with more food, more chances. But this time, I'd be ready. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I prepared. Before dawn, I made 2 phone calls. The first was to my lawyer, Robert Chen, the same man who'd handled Harold's estate. "Robert," I said quietly, "I need you at the house tomorrow at 11. I need to make some changes to my will." He hesitated. "Mrs. Patterson, is everything all right?" "If anything seems off when you arrive," I told him, "don't hesitate to call for help." The second call was to my neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, the woman I'd pretended to give the cupcakes to. I explained as gently as I could. "You mean your own daughter?" she whispered. "I need a favor," I said. "At exactly 10:15, call my house. If I don't answer, or if something sounds strange, call the authorities." She agreed, though her voice trembled. At 9:30 the next morning, I stood by the front window, heart pounding. Right on time, at 10 o'clock sharp, Aninsley's car pulled into the driveway. She stepped out wearing what I'd always called her sweet daughter outfit, a pale blue dress that made her look soft and harmless. She was carrying a drink tray. "Morning, Mom," she said with a warm smile, kissing my cheek. "I brought your favorite, vanilla latte with extra foam." I accepted the cup, but didn't drink. "Thank you, sweetheart. You didn't have to." "Of course I did," she said quickly. "I felt terrible about yesterday. I overreacted about the cupcakes. I was just disappointed you didn't try them." Her smile was practiced, polished. "I know how much you love sweets." We sat together in the living room. She seemed restless, glancing at her watch, her eyes darting toward the hallway that led to Harold's old office. "Mom," she began casually, "I've been thinking about Dad's papers, all those documents and accounts. It must be overwhelming handling everything alone. Maybe I could help?" "I'm managing fine," I said. "But what kind of help do you mean?" Her eyes brightened, thinking she was making progress. "Well, the will, the insurance, all those forms, sometimes things need to be updated, you know. It might be easier if I take care of the paperwork for you." "What kind of updates?" I asked. "Oh, just making sure everything's current, the beneficiaries, the transfers, things like that. It's better to simplify." My untouched coffee sat between us. I saw her glance at it, just once but long enough. "Aninsley," I said, "can I ask you something?" "Of course, Mom." "Where did you get the money for those fancy cupcakes yesterday, and the coffee today?" Her face went pale. "I told you, I saved up. I wanted to do something nice for you." "Saved up from what? Last week you called crying because you couldn't pay Emma's school fees." "That's different," she said quickly. "That's a big expense. This was just a small treat." I leaned forward slightly. $60 for cupcakes isn't small, not when you say you're broke." Her eyes flickered. The sweetness in her tone began to fade. "I don't understand why you're questioning everything I do," she snapped. "I'm trying to be a good daughter." "Are you?" The question hung in the air between us. Aninsley's smile faltered. What's that supposed to mean? It means, I said slowly, I know what was in those cupcakes. The color drained from her face. For a second she looked like a guilty child caught sneaking cookies from the jar. Then her expression hardened. I don't know what you're talking about. Diazepam, I said quietly. Enough to keep me unconscious for hours, and mixed with my medication it could have stopped my heart. She stood up abruptly. That's insane. You're imagining things. Maybe you should see a doctor about your... I did, I cut her off. He tested the cupcakes. I have the report. Silence filled the room. She stared at me, her mouth opening and closing, words failing her. Finally, she sank back into the chair. Mom, she whispered, you don't understand. I'm in trouble. Real trouble. What kind of trouble? I owe people money. Dangerous people. My chest tightened. What people? I got involved in some investments, she said quickly, eyes darting away. They went bad. Now they want their money back and I don't have it. How much? 50,000, maybe more. A chill crept up my spine. So your solution was to drug me? What exactly was the plan, Aninsley? Put me to sleep and then what? She wouldn't meet my eyes. I just needed access to some of the inheritance money. Just a loan. I would have paid it back. Really? I asked coldly. And how were you planning to borrow it while I was unconscious? She hesitated. There was a lawyer. He said he could help speed things along if you weren't able to manage your own affairs. My blood ran cold. You mean, if I were declared mentally incapable? Her silence was answer enough. The phone rang right on time. 10:15. Mrs. Henderson. I kept my eyes on Aninsley as I picked up. Oh, hello, Mrs. Henderson. Yes, I'm fine. No, I don't need anything right now. Thank you for checking. When I hung up, Aninsley was staring at me suspiciously. Who was that? My neighbor, I said calmly. The one I supposedly gave your cupcakes to. Her eyes widened as realization hit. You never gave them to her. No, I said. I lied, just like you've been lying to me for years. Aninsley stood again, this time with desperate energy. Mom, you have to understand. I didn't mean for it to go this far. These people, if I don't pay them, I'm in danger. Then you should have come to me honestly, I said, my voice steady but cold. Asked for help instead of trying to trick me. Would you have given me $50,000 just like that? For your children's safety or a genuine emergency? Maybe, I said, but for this? No. Maybe isn't good enough, she shouted, her voice shaking. The sweet daughter mask was gone completely. I need guarantees. I need security. Security, I echoed. You tried to knock out your own mother for security? I didn't try to hurt you, she screamed. I just needed time to fix things. And what then? Declare me incompetent? Take everything? Her breathing quickened. Her voice dropped to a harsh whisper. You're 68 years old, Mom. Why should I have to wait while everything I need sits in your account? The words hit harder than any slap could. Cold. Calculated. Get out, I said quietly. Mom, wait, we can fix this. Get out. You don't understand what you're doing, she warned, her face twisting with frustration. If I can't pay them, bad things will happen. That's your problem, I said evenly. You made those choices. You'll live with them. Her eyes flashed with fury. You're going to regret this. I'm not going away. You have no idea what I'm capable of. The door slammed so hard the windows shook. For a moment I just sat there, my heart pounding. She was right about one thing. This wasn't over. 20 minutes later, a thin man in a crisp suit walked up my driveway, briefcase in hand. He knocked confidently, expecting, no doubt, to find a confused, docile woman, waiting to sign whatever papers my daughter had prepared. Instead, he found me. Wide awake. Ready. Mrs. Patterson? He asked, flashing a polite smile. I'm David Blackwood. Your daughter scheduled an appointment for us. My daughter scheduled nothing, I said firmly. And if you're here about any estate updates, you're about to be very disappointed. He blinked. I think there's been a misunderstanding. Ms. Patterson contacted our office regarding your will. Miss Patterson had no authority to contact anyone, and if you were planning to help someone take advantage of me, I'd suggest you leave. Now." His confidence evaporated. "Ma'am, Get off my property." He didn't need to be told twice. He turned pale, muttered something about confusion, and hurried to his car. At 11 sharp, Robert Chen arrived. I let him in, and as he listened, his expression grew darker with every detail. "Ramona," he said finally, "this is serious. You need to report it. What she did, this isn't just manipulation, it's criminal." "I know," I said softly, "but before anything else, I need to make sure she can't ever try this again." We spent the next hour updating my will. From that day forward, if anything happened to me under unusual circumstances, Aninsley would receive nothing, not a penny. I also signed a new document, making Robert my legal representative instead of her. When it was done, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace, not happiness, but certainty. Because now, for the first time, I wasn't the one who needed protecting. "There," I said, signing the final document. "Now she has nothing to gain from hurting me." I paused. "But she doesn't know that yet." Robert frowned. "Then she might try again before she realizes it." He was right. And just 3 days later, she did. I was sitting in my living room reading when I heard the sound of 2 car doors slam outside. Through the window, I saw her and Ninsley walking up my path with 2 strangers. One was a middle-aged woman in a business suit. The other was a large man with the build of someone used to intimidation. Ninsley didn't knock. She used her spare key, the one I'd given her years ago for emergencies. "Mom, we need to talk." The woman stepped forward, clipboard in hand. "Mrs. Patterson, I'm Dr. Sarah Mills. Your daughter tells me you've been having some concerns about your memory and decision-making abilities." I raised an eyebrow. "I've been having no such concerns. Your daughter's worried about you," she said smoothly. "She told me you've been making some troubling accusations." I turned toward Aninsley, who was standing smugly behind her. "What exactly did you tell her?" "The truth," she said quickly, "that you've been confused, that you're saying strange things talking about poisoned cupcakes and accusing me of horrible actions." The large man spoke for the first time. "Mrs. Patterson, we're just here to help. Sometimes older folks don't realize when they need a little assistance." "And you are?" "Tom Bradley," he said, puffing up his chest. "I work with Dr. Mills. We specialize in helping families through transitions." And then it clicked. This wasn't a medical visit. It was a setup and intervention designed to make me look mentally unstable. "I want all of you to leave my house," I said firmly. "Mom, we can't just leave you alone when you're like this," Aninsley said, her tone syrup-sweet again. "Dr. Mills thinks you'd really benefit from some professional care." "I'm not going anywhere," I said flatly. Dr. Mills opened her briefcase and laid out papers. "We have some forms that might help clarify your legal status," she said. "If you're having memory issues, it might be best to let someone you trust handle your affairs." "Someone I trust?" I asked. "Like the daughter who tried to drug me 3 days ago?" "See?" Aninsley said quickly, turning to the doctor. "She's delusional. She really believes that." "I don't believe it," I said sharply. "I know it. I have lab reports proving what was in those cupcakes." Dr. Mills gave a sympathetic smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Paranoid thoughts are very common, Mrs. Patterson. The mind often creates elaborate explanations for simple misunderstandings." "Simple misunderstandings?" I repeated. "There's nothing simple about sedatives in my food." "Mom, please," Aninsley pleaded. "Just sign the papers. We want to make sure you're safe." I glanced at the documents, power of attorney forms, medical releases, competency declarations, everything she'd need to take control of my life. "And if I refuse to sign?" Tom Bradley stepped closer. "Then we'll have to take steps to make sure you're protected. Sometimes people having an episode need to be somewhere safe." The message was clear: sign or be removed. "I need to use the restroom," I said calmly. "Of course," said Dr. Mills, "but Tom will accompany you, for your safety." I walked down the hall, my mind racing. They were going to take me whether I agreed or not. Once I was locked away somewhere, Aninsley could claim I'd lost touch with reality and she'd get everything. But I had one advantage they didn't know about. When I came out, they were waiting in the living room. The papers were neatly spread across my coffee table. "Mrs. Patterson," Dr. Mills said pleasantly, "if you'll just sign here, we can arrange for you to be evaluated at a wonderful care facility. You'll be comfortable and safe." I smiled faintly. "Before I sign anything, I have one question." "Of course." "How much is my daughter paying you for this?" Dr. Mills blinked. "I'm sorry?" I said, "How much is she giving you to falsely declare me incompetent?" "Mom, stop," Aninsley snapped. "Dr. Mills is a respected professional." "Really?" I said. "Then she won't mind telling me her license number." Color rose in the woman's cheeks. "I don't see how that's relevant." "Oh, it's very relevant," I replied, "because I'm about to call the medical board to confirm your credentials." Tom Bradley stepped forward again, his tone firm. "Mrs. Patterson, you're getting agitated. That's not helping your case." "My case?" I said. "I thought this was about my health, not a legal battle." That's when I decided to play my ace. "Before we go any further," I said calmly, "you should all know my lawyer has already been here. I've updated my will and my power of attorney documents. If anything happens to me under unusual circumstances—" I paused deliberately. "Aninsley gets nothing." The room went silent. My daughter's face went pale. "You what?" "I changed everything," I said. "You have nothing to gain, no matter what you do." Dr. Mills and Tom Bradley exchanged nervous glances. Whatever deal Aninsley had offered them suddenly didn't look worth it. "Perhaps," Dr. Mills said quickly, gathering her papers, "we should reschedule this evaluation." "I think that's an excellent idea," I said, opening the door. And just like that, they left, papers half-folded, lies unfinished, and my daughter standing outside in the cold light of day, realizing her last plan had just fallen apart. "There won't be a reschedule," I said firmly, "and if any of you set foot on my property again, I'll call the police." They left quickly, all except my daughter. "You can't do this to me," she cried, her voice trembling with rage. "I'm your daughter." I met her gaze steadily. "You stopped being my daughter the moment you tried to hurt me." Her hands shook. "Those people I owe money to. They're not going to wait forever." "Then you'd better find another solution," I said coldly. "One that doesn't involve your mother." "You don't understand what they'll do to me." "Probably nothing worse than what you plan to do to me." Her face twisted with fury. "You'll regret this. You think you're safe just because you changed your will? There are other ways to get what I need." "Is that a threat?" "It's a promise," she hissed. "I'm not giving up. I can't give up." She stormed out, slamming the door so hard a framed photo of Harold and me crashed to the floor. I stood in the silence that followed, realizing she was right about one thing. She wasn't giving up, and that meant I couldn't either. For 2 weeks after her failed stunt with the fake doctor, my house felt like a fortress under siege. I installed new locks, cameras, and motion sensors. Mrs. Henderson checked in twice a day, and Robert Chen had instructions to contact the authorities if I didn't answer his call by nightfall. But even with all that, I knew deep down, this wasn't over. Desperate people don't surrender easily, and according to her own words, my daughter owed money to people far worse than any collection agency. I was still her only way out. The call came on a Thursday morning. Her voice was different this time, small, broken. "Mom, I need to see you," she said. "Please, I know you hate me, but I'm begging you. Just 5 minutes. I'll come to you. We can talk on your porch. I need to apologize." For a long moment I said nothing. There was something in her tone, real fear, not the rehearsed kind she'd used before. 5 minutes, I said finally, on the porch. She arrived an hour later, and I barely recognized her. The polished, manipulative woman I'd seen before was gone. Her hair was unkempt, her eyes hollow, her clothes wrinkled like she hadn't slept in days. She sank down onto the porch steps. "Mom," she whispered, "I'm sorry. For everything." I stayed by the door, one hand resting on the handle, just in case. What happened to you? The people I owe, they found out my plan failed, she said. They're not happy. She rolled up her sleeve, revealing a dark bruise on her arm. This was just a warning. Despite everything, my heart clenched. She was still my daughter. Aninsley, I said softly. I know I have no right to ask you for anything, she said through tears. I tried to hurt you, I tried to steal from you, but I'm out of options. They said they'll hurt me. Or worse, Emma and Jack too. My grandchildren. The innocent ones in all of this. How much time do you have? I asked quietly. 3 days, she whispered. They want the money in 3 days. I studied her face carefully. Was this another trick? Another act? But the bruises looked real. The fear, that was real too. There might be a way, I said slowly. Her head snapped up. What? What way? I said might. But it means you'll have to do exactly as I tell you. No questions, no surprises. Anything, she said quickly. I'll do anything. First, I said, you need to understand something. I know about the trust your father set up. Her brows furrowed. What trust? The one that protects your inheritance, I said. Even if something happens to me, you don't get the money right away. It's released gradually, unless I override it. Can you override it? Yes, I said, but only if I'm alive and mentally sound. Understanding flashed across her face. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. Tomorrow you'll call those people and tell them you'll have their money in 24 hours. Then you'll come here at exactly 2 p.m. with whatever paperwork they give you as proof. But Mom, I don't... Let me finish. You'll come here, and we'll make it look like I'm signing documents to release your inheritance early, but in reality... I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in. It'll be a trap. She blinked. A trap? The authorities will be here, hidden, I said. They'll see everything, every threat, every demand, every word, and then they'll arrest everyone involved. Her face went pale. Including me? That depends, I said. Are you willing to cooperate? To tell them who these people are and how you got involved? Her lip trembled. They'll hurt me if I talk. They'll hurt you anyway once they realize the money isn't coming, I said quietly. This way, you have a chance. She stared at me for a long time, torn between fear and disbelief. What about Emma and Jack? I've already arranged for them to be picked up tomorrow and taken somewhere safe, I said. Your ex-husband doesn't know the details, only that it's for their protection. Her eyes widened. You did that already? Yes, I said. I've been preparing for this for days. I knew you'd be back, and I knew it would be worse this time. For a long moment, she just looked at me. Then, for the first time in years, there was something honest in her eyes. You really thought this through, she whispered. I had to, I said, because I'm your mother, and I refuse to lose you, even to your own mistakes. I had to, I said quietly. You're my daughter. Despite everything you've done, I wasn't going to let you destroy yourself without at least trying to save you. She looked up, her voice trembling. Even after I tried to hurt you? Even then. The next afternoon, my house felt like a stage set for Judgment Day. Detective Rivera was hidden in the kitchen. Detective Chang waited in the guest room down the hall. They'd placed discreet microphones throughout the house, and there were unmarked cars parked quietly on the surrounding streets. Everything was ready. At 2:15, my daughter arrived, nervous, pale, constantly checking her watch. They'll be here soon, she said. Are you sure about this? It's too late to change the plan now, I replied, forcing my voice to stay steady. At exactly 2:30, a black SUV pulled up in front of the house. 3 men got out, 2 large, intimidating ones, and a smaller man in an expensive suit who clearly gave the orders. They didn't knock. Of course not. Aninsley had given them permission to come right in. Mrs. Patterson, the man in the suit said smoothly. I'm Vincent Caruso. I believe you know why we're here. You're here because my daughter owes you money, I said evenly. $60,000, he replied, plus interest. We're here to collect. And if I don't pay? He smiled, though there was nothing kind in it. Let's not discuss unpleasant possibilities, ma'am. I'm sure a smart woman like you understands the situation. One of his men stepped closer. Mr. Caruso doesn't like delays. I have the paperwork right here, I said, gesturing to the coffee table. But before I sign anything, I need some assurances. Vincent tilted his head. What kind of assurances? That once you get your money, I said, you leave my daughter and grandchildren alone. Permanently. He chuckled. Low, cruel. Your daughter brought this on herself. She borrowed from us for a quick return, investments that didn't pan out. She thought she could get rich overnight. Now she pays the price. What kind of investments? I asked. Online gambling, a few bad crypto bets, he said with a shrug. She played the game. She lost. Happens all the time. And if I don't sign those papers? One of the enforcers stepped closer, voice like gravel. Then accidents happen. Stairs, kitchen fires, you know how it goes. I stared at him coldly. Is that a threat? Vincent smiled. It's a statement of fact. Now sign the papers. That was the cue. Suddenly, Detective Rivera and Detective Chang burst from their hiding spots. Police! Hands where we can see them! The room exploded into chaos. The two large men went for their weapons, but the detectives were faster. Within seconds, they were disarmed, tackled, and cuffed. Vincent tried to run, but two officers from outside came through the front door before he made it 3 steps. In under 5 minutes, it was over. Vincent shouted about entrapment and illegal recordings, but Detective Rivera just smiled. You threatened an elderly woman in her own home? He said. That's extortion, intimidation, and likely a few weapons violations, too. As the men were led out, I turned to see my daughter sitting on the couch, shaking. Is it over? She whispered. For them, yes, I said softly. For you, that depends on what you do next. What do you mean? Detective Rivera sat across from her. Miss Patterson, we'll need your full cooperation. That means testifying against these men and being honest about how you got involved, including what happened with your mother. Ann Inslee's eyes darted to mine. Tell them the truth, I said gently. All of it. It's the only way this ends. She nodded slowly. Okay. I'll tell you everything. Hours later, when the officers had finished taking statements and the last patrol car disappeared down the street, I stood in my quiet house. The same house that had once felt like a prison of fear. Now it felt safe again. For the first time in weeks, I breathed without tension, but I knew there was still one decision left to make. What to do about my daughter. 6 months later, spring returned. I sat in my garden, sunlight warming my face, sipping coffee I'd made myself. Coffee I knew was safe because I was the only one who'd touched it. That small comfort, trust, was something I would never take for granted again. The trial had ended 3 weeks earlier. Vincent Caruso and his associates were each sentenced to long prison terms for extortion, threats, and weapons charges. The recordings from that afternoon in my living room had been devastating evidence, not just for me, but for other victims who finally came forward after seeing my testimony. Ann Inslee had kept her word. She testified against them all. In exchange, the prosecutor gave her a deal: 3 years of probation, community service, and mandatory counseling for gambling addiction. She also had to reimburse me for the cupcake testing, the security system, and the damages she'd caused. But her biggest loss was the one that couldn't be undone. Because of her actions, she was permanently removed from Harold's estate. The trust he built, the future he intended for her, was gone. I heard a car door outside and looked up to see Derek, my former son-in-law, walking up the garden path with Emma and Jack. That had become our routine, monthly visits where the children could see their grandmother in peace, away from their mother's chaos. Grandma! 8-year-old Emma ran straight into my arms, giggling. Jack, 10 years old and pretending to be grown, followed with a shy smile. Did you bring the puzzle? Emma asked excitedly. Of course, I smiled. It's waiting for you on the dining room table. Derek lingered as the kids ran inside. "How are you, Ramona?" "Really?" I looked around, the sunlight filtering through the trees, the laughter from inside, the peace I'd fought so hard to reclaim. "I'm well," I said with a quiet smile. "Better than I've been in years." "Any word from Inslee?" Derek asked. I shook my head. "Nothing since the sentencing." "Ramona, I interrupted gently. "Derek, if something happens to me, everything I own goes to Emma and Jack through a trust fund. You'll be their trustee until they're adults." He looked startled. "You don't need to do that." "Yes, I do," I said firmly. "Those children deserve security. They deserve to know their grandmother loved them enough to protect them, not just with words but with actions, and they deserve to be safe from someone who once tried to harm her own mother for money." Derek nodded slowly, his eyes heavy with understanding. "I've never told them the full story," he admitted. "I just said their mother made some bad choices and needed time to get better." "That's probably best for now," I said softly. "Maybe when they're older, they'll be ready to understand." That evening, after they left, I walked through my house, the house that finally felt like mine again. The locks were new, the security cameras blinked quietly from the corners. But for once, I didn't feel like a prisoner behind my own doors. I'd reclaimed this space, and myself. I'd joined a book club at the library, started volunteering at the animal shelter, and even taken up watercolor painting. For 68 years, I'd defined myself as a wife and a mother. Now, for the first time, I was discovering who Ramona Patterson really was, the woman underneath all those titles. The doorbell rang, breaking my thoughts. On the porch stood a young woman holding a legal envelope. "Mrs. Patterson," she said politely, "I'm Jennifer Walsh from the district attorney's office. I have some information about your daughter." My heart tightened. "What about her?" "She violated her probation," Jennifer explained. "She was caught gambling again and missed her counseling sessions. There's a warrant for her arrest. We wanted to let you know in case she tries to contact you. Given the history, we strongly advise you not to engage." I nodded slowly. "Thank you for letting me know." After she left, I sat in silence for a long time, staring out the window. I wasn't shocked, just deeply sad. Somewhere along the way, my daughter had convinced herself that the world owed her comfort, wealth, and shortcuts, and I had failed to see the warning signs early enough, but I'd also learned something profound. I was stronger than I'd ever imagined. When faced with betrayal by the person I'd loved most in the world, I hadn't fallen apart. I'd stood tall, not with revenge, but with reason, with courage, and with love that refused to be naive again. 2 weeks later, the phone rang. For a moment, I hesitated. Then I answered. "Mom." It was her. Her voice was small, frightened. "Inslee," I said carefully. "I know you probably don't want to talk to me," she whispered, "but I didn't know who else to call. I just wanted to say, I understand now. What I did to you, how wrong it was. I don't expect forgiveness, but I needed you to know that I'm sorry. Truly sorry." I closed my eyes, hearing both the guilt and the little girl I used to know hiding behind those words. "You need to turn yourself in," I said quietly. "Running won't fix anything. I can't go to prison, Mom." "I won't survive it." "You won't survive running either," I said gently. "Eventually they'll find you, and it'll be worse." "Maybe," she said softly, "but at least this way, I have a little control." "What about Emma and Jack?" A pause, then through her tears, "They're better off without me. We both know that." The line went quiet except for her broken breathing. "I love you, Mom," she whispered. "I know I've got a terrible way of showing it, but I do. I hope someday you'll remember the good parts of who I used to be." Inslee. But the line was already dead. I never heard from her again. 6 months later, Derek told me she'd been arrested in Nevada, serving 2 years for probation violations and new fraud charges. I felt sadness, but not guilt. Sadness for the little girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. but peace knowing that her fate was finally in her own hands, not mine. On my 70th birthday, the garden was filled with laughter. Emma and Jack had thrown me a small surprise party. Mrs. Henderson was there, along with my book club friends and a few volunteers from the shelter. We ate cake I'd baked myself, and when I blew out 70 candles, I wished not for youth or riches, but for continued peace. That night, when everyone was gone, I sat on my back porch under the stars. I thought about Harold, about the love we shared, and about the daughter we'd raised. I thought about trust and betrayal, about loneliness and freedom. For years, I had feared being alone, but now I realized being alone and being lonely aren't the same thing. I wasn't lonely anymore. I had friends who cared about me for who I was, not what I could give them. I had grandchildren who loved me unconditionally, and most of all, I had a life that finally belonged to me. The house was silent, but it was a peaceful silence, the kind that comes after a storm. Somewhere out there, my daughter was facing the consequences of her choices. And for her sake, I hoped she'd find healing, but whether she did or not, her story was no longer mine to fix. I was finally, beautifully, free. Gentle music cue, closing narration. Now I'm curious about you. If you were in my place, what would you have done? Have you ever faced a betrayal that changed how you see the people you love? Tell me in the comments. I read every one. And before you go, I've left 2 more stories on your screen that are viewer favorites. They'll surprise you, maybe even stay with you long after they end. Thank you for listening. And take care of your heart.